I don't speak German. When I prepared this presentation, I was largely ignorant of the whole Europeana effort. Actually, when I was invited to come speak, I'd never even heard of it. I went to the hackathon yesterday and I had to change my entire presentation. So this is the result. If it sucks, I'm sorry. As you can see, the title is Open Software for the Public Good. That's not always how people perceive it. I think that it's a particularly relevant way to look at it from the Europeana perspective. Let's see how this thing works. No. The basic question. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the lolcat meme. Anybody not? You can raise your hand. I won't heckle you much. There is actually a programming language that uses, it's called lol code. They use this meme to write code in. The basic question, I can have software. Yes, I think. Now, is anybody not familiar with the open software movement, groundswell thing? Everybody here is familiar with open source or free software or open software in some respect. Okay, so this is probably all obvious then. It has a very low cost of acquisition. You know. And one of the things that is often overlooked as one of its benefits is that it tends to stick around. Even the thousands of abandoned projects on SourceForge are still there. So if somebody someday sees something there that they want to pick up and work with, even though nobody has touched it in years, it's still accessible. Thanks to things like the Wayback Machine, if it has ever been out there, it is still out there. It will probably always be out there. And if you don't believe me, ask Oliver North. Sorry. Not quite such a topical joke anymore. That's not my cat, by the way. Okay, if it's open, people can see it. You know, one of the terms that's often used along with openness is transparency. They don't mean quite the same thing, but I will get to that, hopefully. So if it's open and it's visible, if they can see it, then you are sharing it with them. And that's what Europeana is all about, correct? Sharing. Now, this is from the About page of the Europeana portal. I'm not going to read it to you. I'm sure all of you can read for yourselves. But the concept that bringing the diversity of Europe's cultural and scientific heritage to the online world is well and good, but it sounds static. It sounds historical. It sounds legacy, heritage, okay? Stuff that lives in the past. The thing is that the software that's being used to implement the whole Europeana concept is heritage that's being created right now. This is software that will live forever. Well, until the global collapse, but we won't worry about that. That's when all the smartphones become dumb. So since the software behind this is part of what Europeana is contributing to the global village, I don't care for that term, but the knowledge that is part of the humanity's birthright, it's appropriate that it be open and shared as well. And it is. I'm not sure what happened there. Is that the right slide? Yep. Okay. So the software is something that is being made. It's not visible through the same mechanism, and perhaps that's something that might be considered in the future is a sidebar from Europeana detailing the work that is going on into making the portal and the accessibility of all the information happen. The process that is being used to create that software, now that's where things really get interesting, because it's the people. The software, as Vasilis borrowed for his talk earlier from my abstract, open software is not just about the code. It's about how the code was created, about the people who created it, how they were inspired to create it, how they worked together, the process of creating it. Open software it's a way of life. It's a way of thinking, okay? And the more people that are involved in the software behind Europeana, the richer that way of thinking, the collective way of thinking, becomes, and the more valuable and precious it becomes, and more meaningful and needful that it be shared. Because what's going on here is of value not just to the European community and to art and culture lovers all over the world. It's important to the future of the human race as we move forward into this ever more technological future until the global collapse. But sorry? Or singularity, yes, well. Okay, what is going on, collating all the information from all the information providers, all the people. Now, I'm getting into an area here where I'm not all that familiar with how Europeana works, so pardon my ignorance, I do. What's going on, getting information from I don't know how many hundreds of different sources, probably each with their own unique format and their unique perspective on how things should be, and probably most of them not originally intended to be shared in the way Europeana is envisioning sharing them, pulling all that together into something that can be looked at from the outside and searched and browsed is a monumental effort. And I'm sure anyone involved in this is aware of that. Anybody think that what's going on is simple? Why aren't they done yet? They had a whole weekend. Okay. I think that what is being done here, the challenges that Europeana is facing, have tremendous potential as a jumping off point for other efforts of similar or dissimilar goals. I ran into this yesterday when looking at some of the information that came back from a search. I saw some of the extended labels all with the same tag, but each in a different language and many of them in different character sets. Now, because all the tags were the same, there were no language-specific attributes on them. The code could not reasonably respond to a request, even if it could have been framed, give me those descriptions that are in Greek, because the information wasn't tagged that way. And I asked about it. And I was told that the people who built that had to work with the information as it had come from the providers who had not ground that fine. They had not labeled these different tags as being different languages. They had just stuck the information in there. And since, let's see if I can remember correctly what I was told. Something about some of the information was in Turkish and some of it was in Greek, and they were both represented in Hebrew. That completely blew my mind. I can't think of anybody having done that, much less having to deal with the results. So, dealing with that, obviously, if it is ever to become a goal to be able to find things that give me the Greek description, find something for me that has this description only in Greek, is going to require countless hours of work on somebody's part, either to write code to analyze the tags and annotate them appropriately, or actually go in there by hand and do it. And however that is accomplished, if it is accomplished, this is just one example. If it is accomplished, if it turns out that doing so is eventually a goal of Europeana's effort, however it is accomplished is going to be a technique that will hold value for somebody else in the world. Now, the places where Europeana is breaking new ground, and I'm not sure this is breaking new ground. I only speak English, and bad English at that. So I've never had to deal with things in other languages, which is probably why it is so astonishing to me. All right, now I've confused myself. What needs to be done may have already been done by somebody else. But if it hasn't, and Europeana does it, it means Europeana will be breaking new ground and setting an example, and even if in the process mistakes are made and false starts are made, and it takes a while to get it right, the end result will be a gem, will be a contribution to humankind's knowledge that is without value. Well, without price. I say without value. Priceless. Valueless has a different meaning. No. Anybody have any questions, or do I need to go through all that again? Okay. Now I'm going to step into a little bit about the culture of open software development. It's not just about the software. It's about, as I said before, about how the software is created, about the outlook of the people creating it and the people for whom it's intended and the people who use it. Those last two, not so much, because people often don't care how, whether their bank used Linux or not. They want their money. I have seen automatic teller machines in South America with the Linux Penguin on them. The ATMs are running Linux, which was a thrill to me. But the person on the street walking up to them, he didn't care. Why is there a penguin on my screen? Oh well. Now, keeping an open mind is important. Keeping an open mind to new ideas. Obviously, if you are working towards something, and unless you are perfect and already know the answer, you're going to want to find information elsewhere that will help you achieve your goals. Keeping your mind open to ideas that you have not yet considered, obviously, is important. More important, however, is keeping your mind open to ideas that seem to be in conflict with yours. And keeping your mind open to criticisms of your ideas. Because you might not have the best answer. It takes a kind of humility that is not generally associated with software developers. I'm very humble. But being open to that sort of input is essential to the best progress forward. Now, this aspect of openness is something I have seen traditional software shops have a lot of difficulty with. We need to have all this in meetings. You want me to share this in a mailing list that everybody can read? No, I don't think so. I have spent, I don't know how much time helping some companies overcome that. And aside from the managers who weren't involved anyway, the developers eventually appreciated what had happened and liked it better than they had had before. Of course, if you start out being open, it's easier to stay that way, hopefully. Unless Microsoft or somebody tries to buy you out, then it can be difficult to remain open. Now, I said there's a chance that what you want to do may have been done before by somebody else. And you may or may not remember to look for it. You may or may not look for it and find it or fail to find it. Somebody might bring it to your attention. Once found, you may find something in there you can borrow or use entirely. But if you can't find it, it's possible you're inventing something new. And the scope of this project is large enough that I think that's going to be more common than people might think. New things are going to be attempted here that haven't been attempted before. And that could be a scary thing, particularly when the result has such a high profile. Now, again, on the subject of consensus and working together with other people, along with being open and accepting criticism, have respect for the people with whom you work, even or possibly, especially if you've never met them. And even if you have to cope with someone who is perceived by the world as an expert, and you are in awe of them and afraid to ask questions, remember that they were not born knowing the answers. And that should help you cope with dealing with them and asking the questions, help you build the courage to ask the questions, because they weren't born knowing the answers. And so at some point, they were as ignorant as you may feel you are. So there's common ground. So you can ask your questions, and if they act snarky or arrogant, remind them that they weren't born knowing the questions, and then go find somebody else because they won't talk to you anymore. Now, not on the slide, but sort of hidden between the lines here is one of my favorite topics. I've done a lot of speaking on it. I think that it may already be well known to most of you, but it's the issue of diversity. Now, when you're working with other people in a distributed collaboration environment, there are times you'll end up working with people you have never met. You may never meet them. They may be in a faraway place with a completely different time zone. They may come from a wildly different culture. And they may come from an entirely different lingual and cultural background, particularly lingual. Now, so what? Well, as we march forward, or possibly quick march, or possibly even charge forward into the future at a breakneck pace, people are becoming more and more used to instant gratification. Send an email, get it right away. In 1986, I was in Massachusetts in the USA talking to a friend on the telephone who was in Washington. During the course of the conversation, I sent him an email. 15 minutes later, still during the conversation, I heard it beep on his end, and I was amazed. He was amazed too. That was so damn fast. Of course, the joke now is you check your email and you don't have any, so you check it again. And there's a little too much truth in that. My point is that if somebody is on the other side of the planet, they may be asleep. They may be in the middle of a national holiday. They may have a family, all right? So don't always expect, unless you do have awareness of your correspondent's background and current activities, that if you send mail, you're going to get an answer back right away. That getting an answer back, expectation of getting an answer back right away and not getting one leads to a lot of flame wars. You know, how dare you not answer me? Wah, 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 wah. So, and he comes back from, taking his child to the hospital and finds out that half the world now hates him because of something you said because he didn't read his mail. Now, how fair is that? So, be aware that you won't necessarily get an answer right away. And in online, in immediate communications, instant messaging, IRC, chat, to a lesser extent Twitter, if there isn't a common language, some things may be phrased in unexpected ways that may make no sense, may seem insulting, and chances are that it's a matter of the language difference. So don't assume that if someone who you know speaks another language as their first language has said something insulting to you, it may have been simply a matter of a direct translation from an idiom that was uninsulting in their language and basically cast aspersions on your family and yours. So be aware that they may not speak the language, they may not have the same cultural background, they may not be in the same time zone. All the online communication has lost the things we learned growing up as children, which is how to read body language, allowing people to interrupt in the middle of your conversation and say, no, you've got that wrong. Seeing that somebody is tired of talking to you. You don't get that online, unless, of course, you use Skype and they're right there in front of you. But then you just see their face. You don't see what they're doing off screen. So this is all part of the working together and respecting each other and being tolerant of each other in online and distributed collaboration. Okay? There will be a quiz. And no, you may not have coffee first. Any questions about my latest diatribe? All right, now I'm wandering back towards the original material. All right, open is attractive. If you see 2 pocket watches on display, one of them is a pocket watch, the other is a pocket watch with a glass case so you can see all the things twiddling and moving around inside. Which one are you going to find more interesting? Which one are you going to look at more? Which one are you going to call your friends over to say, hey, check this out? The watch that just sits there like every other watch you've ever seen? Or the one with all the moving parts and bells and whistles and things? So if it's open, people like to look inside. Now, not everybody. We're talking about developers here. Okay. Now, if person A sees the watch, they'll call over somebody else and say, hey, check this out. And people who come to look at, this is another argument for there being a sidebar, just talking about the infrastructure supporting the project. People who come to see the content may become interested in the infrastructure that supports it, particularly if they have an opportunity to see it, particularly if it is showcased. On the other hand, people who hear about the open software development effort at Europeana may get interested in that and then find themselves interested in the content. It works both ways. Now, which of those you find more valuable, I don't think there's one that's better than the other. I mean, it's all sharing. You know, either one furthers the project's aims. In terms of openness and transparency as a responsibility, I found a quotation referring to the International Court of Justice, a statement that said that not merely that justice shall be done, but that it shall be seen to be done. Sounds fairly dry at first, but stop and think about it. You know, let's take a look at a recent event, the supposed capture of Osama bin Laden. I know that in the US, there are a lot of people that were, shall we say, skeptical because of the lack of visible proof. A, that he'd been caught, and, oh gosh, he was buried at sea. Maybe the US government is just, trying to fool us. They have a long history of that. US citizens have a long history of thinking that. So visibility there would have, modulo Photoshop would have diffused a lot of that. So things that happen in the open are less capable of being misinterpreted. So it's good to regard, okay, this is subjective. I consider it good. It's not universally good for something to be done in the open transparently rather than being done behind closed doors. There are reasons why sometimes you want to be behind closed doors. The promise that someone has the right to be confronted with their accuser is balanced by the desire to be able to make accusations anonymously. If you're the accuser, you just as soon not have people find out. These are just some excerpts from those two organizations, Software in the Public Interest. It says, one of their goals is to software systems for use by the general public without charge. They're just basically where they're referring to their goals of software and making it available and fostering it for public accessibility as one of their goals. I think I'm being told that I'd better shut up soon. And from the Apache Software Foundation also. So that is my cat. And she really said that. And that is my last slide. So there is one more slide, but it's the footnote.